Hey fans, this episode is Fatal Pick, Horror in the Hillside. Now, it's arguably one of the more violent, or I guess graphic and heartrending stories on the Southwick Time Machine, but it got a great response from readers when it debuted. Anyway, let's dive right in, so here we go. George Gasper was born in Hungary in April 1866. Seeking a better life, he decided to go to the land of opportunity and arrived in America in 1884. His future wife came over in 1886. The pair wed in Westfield, Massachusetts on November 22nd, 1889, and they lived there before purchasing a farm in the Hillside section of neighboring Southwick, Massachusetts, around 1890. That year, George's wife became pregnant, and with the new addition on the way, the Gaspers knew that they would need extra help on their farm. So George enlisted the help of his mother, Anna, and his stepfather, Andreas, to move from Hungary to come and live on the farm. But as more and more children were being added to the Gasper household, George's aged parents could only do so much. So George hired a young farmhand named Andrew in the spring of 1902. He was about 20 years old. Anyway, when Andrew fell ill that summer, Anna gave him her full attention. Even after Andrew recovered, Anna continued catering to him. She even provided him with food outside the family's usual meal times. Now, this doesn't sound like a big deal, but during this time period, it was a very big deal for the hired help to be eating the farmer's food when it wasn't mealtime. Anyway, on September 14th, 1902, Andreas told his wife that he found a thick growth of mushrooms. So she grabbed a pail and they walked to a remote pasture located about a half mile or so from the Gasper home. Now, it's difficult to determine what happened next, but after picking mushrooms, Andreas took out a razor and cut Anna's throat ear to ear. As she lay on the ground with blood pouring out of her neck, Andreas picked up a large stone and started beating her head with it. Now, Luther Wright, who lived near the Gaspers, heard Anna scream. He ran over to the Gasper home and got George. Luther and George ran into the direction of Anna's cries. When they saw the horrific event, George yelled, "You old fool, what you doing?" In hearing George, Andreas dropped the stone. He drew his razor and turned it on himself. However, George grabbed his arm and took away the razor before he could inflict any harm on himself. After George overpowered his stepfather, he took him into a barn and strapped him down until authorities arrived. He then ran over to his mother. She was badly beaten and had lost a lot of blood. George carried her into his home and summoned Dr. Porter and Southwick Selectman George Doherty. The latter arrested Andreas without incident and brought him to Westfield to face arraignment the next day in Westfield District Court. Anna was clinging to life, but her injuries were just too severe. She died in the Gasper home around 5:30 the next morning, September 15th. The Gaspers were really shocked about the violent attack because the aged couple never quarreled, and there were no known problems between Andreas and Andrew. An autopsy was performed, and it determined that Anna's death was due to a fracture at the base of her skull. The medical examiner also reported that Anna's body had 3 cuts above the right eye and on the forehead, a broken nose, 8 cuts on the top and side of the head, a fractured right cheekbone, a crushed in lower right jaw. Her ears were nearly cut off, she had massive facial bruising, and her throat was cut beneath her chin. Now, the attack on Anna was so violent that it took Luther Wright some time to recover, after not only witnessing the brutal beating, but seeing Anna's mutilated face and neck. Authorities spoke to the Gaspers' neighbors, who told them that they knew of the young farmhand, but they did not know his name or where he came from. They also said that he mysteriously disappeared days before the attack. And interestingly enough, when they questioned George Gasper, he told them that he thought the man's name was Andrew, but really knew nothing else about him. Andreas barely spoke or understood English. When he appeared in court, he refused to enter a plea. So the court entered a plea of not guilty on his behalf and bound him to the next sitting of the grand jury, which issued an indictment, and the case went to the Superior Court. But it was put on hold so the court could determine Andreas's mental state. So while awaiting trial, Andreas remained in a double-wide cell. He didn't speak with anyone because no one in the prison spoke his language, and he had no visitors except for an invalid who was periodically locked up with him. Prison guards would later tell the court that Andreas seemed normal, only noting that his cell was unkept and that he did not bathe. They also said that during a sweep of his cell, they confiscated a knife he had concealed after a meal. So Andreas' case proceeded, and he appeared in Superior Court on December 29th, where he pleaded guilty to the charges through an interpreter. Upon receiving the guilty plea, the judge sentenced Andreas to spend his remaining years behind bars at the Men's State Prison in Concord, Massachusetts. You can read Fatal Pick, Horror in the Hillside on the Southwick Time Machine at www.southwicktimemachine.com. The complete story is there, as are the additional research notes and any edited out portions. If you liked the story, hit the like button and let me know what you think of the story by dropping a comment below. It's feedback from fans that keeps the Southwick Time Machine going, and it helps me gauge the content fans like when developing future stories. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel as new videos are dropping soon. Stay tuned, you never know where the time machine will take you next.